if you would, please go to the beginning of Unit 1. So I'm on page 29. We're going to go over lessons 3, 4, probably just those 2. All right. Tomorrow we'll go over 5, 6, and 7. I'm not trying to throw too much stuff at you. Probably tomorrow too we'll go and we'll build something that's not in the book, but we'll go out and build something kind of cool ourselves, but it'll be fairly small. All right. So again, I'm on page 29, Unit 1, getting started with Node.js. And as the author says here, now we've got Node installed and up and running. So chapter 3 is going to introduce NPM. Again, NPM stands for Node Package Manager. If you would please go into your browser address bar and type in npmjs.com. Should get a brightly colored screen that says build amazing things on it. Got it? Okay. This is the Node Package Manager. This contains the modules, all the stuff that's available for you to be able to use. What they have you use in this in the chapter here is they have you bring in a module where you're able to basically, where was it? Oh, where is it? You're able to basically say, put in a zip code, and it'll look up and tell you the city that's in there. That's what's in this chapter. But what I want to get across to you is, if you're going to build something yourself and you're like, geez, I wonder if there's a package that does that, this is where you come to search for it. Okay? All right. So we'll go over lesson 3 where we'll start building a module, and lesson 4, again, we'll come in there. As it says, we'll launch a simple website. We're actually going to create a really simple server and stuff. It's only going to be, like I said, 5 to 10 lines of code. Tomorrow we'll build on that, and we could do it already today. You know, basically we're just going to use if statements to say if we put in this, do this, if we put in this, do this type of thing. Then we'll go into chapter 6. Okay, because we want to be able to service different kinds of HTML files. All right. And then lesson 7, by the end of the period tomorrow, all right, I'm going to have you work on lesson 7. That's the first one of these, what do they call them? Capstones. This is the first capstone that's in here. And this is creating the beginning of that confetti cuisine application. I'm going to give you at least an hour tomorrow where you can start working on that. I'm going to ask that you try to get that done by Friday. All right? Okay. So let's jump in. I'm in lesson 3. So I am on page 31. They mentioned there the lesson covers creating a Node.js module, constructing a Node.js application with NPM, and installing a Node.js package with NPM. All right, so this is, you see this, consider this. I'm not going to read to you. This is that idea that you want to be able to have someone enter in a zip code, and you will tell them the city and the state that the zip code are in. Okay? And it says, luckily for you, you don't have to do this because NPM has a package that will already do this for you. So, top of page 32, a Node.js app is made up of, typically, it could be hundreds of JavaScript files. And you've got it, you know, and not just JavaScript files, but we're literally, some of this, part of the reason that I had you go back and review the stuff you reviewed, you're still going to be creating HTML files. You're still going to be creating CSS files. All right, you're still going to be creating client-side JavaScript files that don't do all that much. But then you're going to be supercharging your apps by adding Node to them. Okay? All right. About halfway down on page 32, there's a note there. that says this exports object. That'll become important as we go on. But let's look at the code that's in here. Okay? All right. This is expecting, you see listing 3.1? Can you see that? Okay. This is expecting that you've created a file. Remember that thing they had in the last chapter that had that array in it with the positive message? That you created this and you called it messages.js. All right? So it says if you want to be able to use that file, at the bottom of that file you put in what's called an export statement, and here you're going to be using a require statement. When you require like this, you can require either your own modules or NPM modules. Not only that, some of the stuff that you require, you're going to have to literally install into your program. That's how fast it goes. Other stuff is automatically brought into the program so you don't have to install it. I'm not even expecting that's going to make a whole heck of a lot of sense, but it will when we start doing it. All right? So on the bottom of the page here it says require is another Node.js global object used to locally introduce methods and objects. The example they're giving in here, you're bringing in your own module, your own messages file, messages.js. All right? Then on the next page here, on the top of page 33, they talk about using the require statement. I think it'll make more sense when we actually look through them. Okay? Do you remember that one of the things that I gave you was, you know, in your, on the flash drive I gave you, it's got a thing in there called like written tests or tests. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but that's in there. All right? That's another thing I'm going to want you to do is all these written tests. The written tests are worth 100 points. Now, Paul didn't especially, I think, like my written tests. I don't know if he didn't think they were extensive enough or whatever, but I think the main thing, I think the reason he didn't like them, and again, I could be wrong, but I think the reason that he didn't like them is I'm concentrating more on the book than he is. So a lot of times when you're taking these tests, if you can't find an answer, I took them right from these quick check things that you see right here. So take a look. What object is used to make functions or variables within one module available to the other? Well, then look on the bottom of the page. If you scroll down, it shows you the answer. Okay, so it's the exports. All right, running npm commands. Okay, it says if you run npm -l, let's try that. So go back to your Git window. Type in npm -l, hit enter. Mine's just sitting there. Oh, there it is. And it shows you those are all the different things that you can run from npm. You're never going to be asked, you know, hey, put those on a test or whatever. Never anything like that. But if you look through it, there's a boatload of stuff that you can type in from there. The ones that you're going to use most often, if you look at table 3.1 that's on the top of page 34 in your book, you're going to be doing npm init. You're going to be doing npm install all the time. All right? Those two you're going to be using all the time. npm publish, if we're going to publish something and it says saves and uploads a package that you build to the npm package community, you see that? That isn't a project that you create. That's you create your own code module and you think it's so good, you want to send it out and have npm put it on their site. So you can actually ask that it be published and they'll check it and see whether or not they want to add it. Okay. npm start, yeah, we will use that. npm stop, that is a way to abruptly quit an application that's running. So if you were running an application and let's say that in order to do the application you needed a database and for some reason that database isn't available, as an example, then what you might want to do is you might want to do an npm stop type of thing. All right, the docs shows you the things that are in the documentation. On the bottom here of page 34, I'm not going to read to you. They talk about modules, they talk about packages, they talk about dependencies. This will make more sense when you see it. All right? But modules, as it says, they are the JavaScript. It's the code. Packages are when you put together one or more modules into a package. It's kind of like, look at it this way, it's kind of like a folder. A folder can have one or more files in it, right? So a file is kind of like a module, and a folder is kind of like a package. All right? Now, sometimes what will happen is we will add something to our program. You're going to see this when we get into the next unit, we add Express. But when Express gets added, everything that Express depends on, that gets added to your program too. So your program is going to go from like this big to this big real fast. And we're going to see how you can make that so it's like, does that really matter? Yes, but we'll see how you can make that a lot easier for yourself when we get to that point, okay? All right. As they mentioned on the top of page 35, if you'd like to incorporate some functionality into your application, you can likely find a package that performs whatever it is you want it to do at npm-js.com. All right. Now, let's assume here. In fact, this might be what we do tomorrow. I got to see if I wrote it or not, because if I didn't, I don't know if I'll have time, but we'll see. Let's do this. Let's go. Okay, let's go in. We've already gone in and we've created this hello world, this main.js, right? And that's on your desktop, is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, go back to your desktop and you've got that file on there right now. But let's create a folder and let's call that folder. So let's create a new folder and let's call the folder stock ticker. One word. Little S-T-O-C-K, big T, little I-C-K-E-R. All right. And then I'm looking and I don't even see the one that I created. Oh well. Go back, right mouse click on stock ticker. Right mouse click on the folder, and right under Git Bash here, do you have a thing that says open with code? Do that. Open it with code. All right. And right now it should be empty. Okay. We will go in, we're going to create, so do a file, new file in there. We're not going to put any code in it right now. But I want you, so you got the new file up, just do a file and do a save as, and we'll keep it the way the author has it. Type in there main.js. Remember to put it in double quotes. So double quote, main.js, double quote. It can be empty. Totally fine.
You need to save this in the stock ticker folder?
Yes. When you get done today, you can, the other file you have with the console.log, you can just dump that if you want to. All right, you done all that? Mm. All right, now, what I want you to do is I want you to go back to your Git window. All right? In your window, it should have the path where you currently are. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. And we want to go to the folder that's called stock ticker. So type in cd space stock ticker. You can put it all in lowercase or uppercase. It doesn't matter. Just do a cd stock ticker. And it should change your path so that it's got whatever your path was. Now it should have / stock ticker on the end of it.
Mine just says cd beginning arguments.
No, that should be one word. You created it. Did you create it as one word?
No.
Oh. Yeah, go back and change it. Do a file save as on that file. I'd start by doing it there. Oh, you got a main in there. Oh, you mean your folder's name stock ticker?
Yeah.
Yeah, go close that, close this, just close the whole thing. Go back to your desktop. Manually change it. Don't use blank spaces. Now you should be able to go in and do that. CD spaces stock ticker. No, you need the CD first. Okay. All right. Now, normally what you do to start up a package is you make what's called an initialization file. Okay? So, you type in, we're going to run through the steps and I'm going to show you a shortcut. But from where you are, then type in npm init. npm space init and hit enter. All right, you can read this stuff yourself, but it's going to create another file for you and it'll create some other stuff. But it's an initialization file. And it says the name of your package, that's the same name as the name of your folder. Remember we said before it's like a folder? So yours should say stock ticker. That's fine, so hit enter. The version, typically, unless you are doing versioning where you're making version 1, whatever, this is fine. So we'll leave it like that, hit enter again. Description, all right, we're going to call this simple stock application. Okay, that's fine. Simple stock application, and hit enter again. Then entry point. Does it say main.js? See, it's smart enough to know. That's why we created that file first. All right, and that's what we want. So hit enter again. Test command, don't worry about that. Just hit enter. Get repository. We're going to eventually be making repositories for all this stuff. But as we start, no, I'm not going to worry about that. That's just one more thing we don't have to worry about for now. Hit enter again. Keywords. If we were going to put this out as an actual website, we could put those keywords in there like you do when you're setting up a site. We don't care. Just hit enter again. Author, put your name in there. Most people put in first name, last name. License is okay as it is. Some people put MIT in there because that's an open source license. But we just got ISC. Just hit enter. And you see it says about to write. Can you see all that stuff? Okay. This is JSON right here. This is JavaScript object notation. It's a set of key value pairs. Name, stock ticker. Version 1.0.0. Author, Keegan Young. Understand what I'm saying? All right. And it comes back. It's created this file for you. You have this file now on your system. And this file is called package.json. And it says, is everything okay? Okay. And yes, it is. So just hit enter. Okay. Now, if you type in this, just type in right now from your command line, ls, and hit enter. And you should see that you've got main.js in there and you've got package.json in there. So those are both in there. If you now go back to Visual Studio Code and you bring it back, you bring it up, you'll see that you now have both those files in there. Not only that, can you see what I'm talking about on the left-hand side? Mm-hmm. Notice that main.js, it's got a JS next to it, saying it's a JavaScript file. Package.json has got curly braces. You see that? It means it's a JSON file.
In Visual Studio Code?
Yes, in Visual Studio Code. Well, let's do it this way. Minimize that. Minimize that. Double click on here. Well, they're both there.
I'm wondering if the one you have up is the old one that had a blank space in it. So go ahead and close that. Close what you had up in Visual Studio Code. Just close them both. All right. Now right mouse click on that and choose open code. And it should be in there then. There we are. Okay? All right. Now, just so you know, you don't have to do this right now. Let's say that you don't want to set up anything. You don't care about a name. You don't care about a damn thing. You with me? Okay. You just want to build a real quick package. If we'd have said npm init -y, that means just take all the defaults. Okay? I wanted you to go through this because I wanted you to build the file yourself, so you could at least see what's in there. But under the initializing a node.js module that's on pages 35 and 36, okay, that's what we wanted to do. All right? Okay. Let's see. He gives a different example, but you get the idea. Okay, I think what we're going to do, we're going to put some code in here, and we're going to, it'll be fine. Let's see. What I want you to do is go back to Git, and I'm following what's in the book, and I'm on the middle of page 36. I want you to type in this. First, I'm going to clear the screen. You don't have to, but I'm going to. We're going to install our first package in here, okay? So type in npm space install space the word cities space -- save. You don't even have to hit enter because I want you to take a look at what's there. We're telling it to go to the Node Package Manager. We're telling it to find the module that's called cities. And we're telling it to install it. The -- save means we only want to make it available for this project. We don't want to make it because we're only going to use it in this project. So if you've got all that in there, hit enter. It shouldn't take real long, I think. Okay, so now what it says in here, mine says at least, npm notice created a lock file as package lock.json. You should commit this file, etc. And then there's a few other things. But you see where it says added 3 packages from 4 contributors? Okay. What I want you to do is go back to VS Code. You see a couple things in there. You now have a file called package lock.json. What that has in it is the same stuff that you had before, but it also has some stuff that you have just added. You see this dependency thing? Mm-hmm. When we put in that cities had its stuff. Cities depends on # and depends on Nodejs. So it loaded both of those as well. All right. Now you can close that. We're not going to do anything with that file. We'll look at those files later. But look where it says on the top. Do you see where it says node module? Can you see that up on the left-hand side near the top? Do you see where it says node_modules? Yeah. Click the greater than sign. Just click right on that greater than sign. You see now cities, # and Nodejs, and you can click those greater than signs if you want to. And it doesn't look like there's really much of anything in there, but it's telling you that what we've done is we have just, for lack of better words, we have just added a package. Okay? Now, I want you to open up your package.json file. Not your lock one, but your package.json file. Did you? Mm-hmm. Down at the bottom, do you see where it now says dependencies? Yeah. We just put that in. That dependency was added to your package.json file. All right, by that install line that we put in there. All right. And they mention on the bottom of page 37, the author says the -- save flag saves that package as a dependency just for this project. All right. Some of these things can get really big. When we put in Express, instead of it saying there's 3 dependencies like we just said, it's like 57. All right, so we're going to talk about how we can make our life a little bit easier when we do that. Open up main.js. All right, turn to page 38 if you're not there, please. Do you see listing 3.4 on page 38? Mm-hmm. See those 3 lines of code?
Yeah.
Key them in into main.js. So const cities equal require cities var, which you never should use, but they are my city equals cities.zip. Can you see when you start typing that in? You may or may not have noticed it, but var, the second line, var my city equals cities.zip. As soon as I put that in, the IntelliSense is kicking in, and it's got zip underscore lookup, which is the one we want. So you can just double click on that one, or you can keep typing yourself if you want. Then in double quotes, 100.100.16. And the last line, console.log my city. Okay, did you put those 3 lines in?
Yeah.
All right. Then save. All right, go back, if you would please, go back to Git. Type in node main and hit enter. See what you got? Mm-hmm. Now let's go back again. Let's go back again into our main.js file in Visual Studio Code. So go into that file again. Let's do a lookup. And let's put in there 63385. Got it? So go into your main.js file, change that 10016 to 63385, save it, go back into Git and run the program again.
Yeah, I got one over.
Right, exactly what you'd think, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, and this is not a big thing, but you've now written a Node application with, for lack of better words, a little bit of meat to it. All right, not a lot, but I mean, there's a little bit of stuff in here. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And there's different ways that we could do this. We could come up now. We could literally have our own form that we created that asked you to enter a zip code, and then underneath it you could have a text area, for example, that comes up, and it would tell the city that it was in and the state that it was in. See what I'm saying? Because we're hard coding this stuff in right now, so we're making it a lot harder than it really has to be. Because every time you do this, you got to go back to your main.js file and save and change it and save it again. That's kind of a pain in the butt, but it does work, right? So, all right. So that is it for lesson 3. Let's go over lesson 4, which is building a simple web server, starting on page 40, and then that'll be it for today because we've already we've gone through lessons 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we've gone through 5 lessons already. Like I said, then tomorrow we will go through 5 and we will go through 6, and then I'm going to turn you loose, so to speak, and let you work on 7 by yourself tomorrow. All right?
So on this thing that we just did, how does it find the cities like that?
It's got a lookup in there. There is code that is built into that node, the node module, into that zip underscore lookup. There's actual JavaScript that's built into there. It's doing a big lookup. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's going through a database. My guess is it probably is. All right, so like I said, let's go look on here on page, I'm going up to page 40. Lesson 4, building a simple web server in Node.js. All right. So the author says this lesson covers some basic functions of the HTTP module. You know what HTTP is. We've talked about this before, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. This module is built into Node. In other words, you don't have to go out and install it like we just installed cities, but we still have to require it in our program in order to be able to use it. You're going to see that in just a minute. So, this lesson, as it says, covers generating a basic web server using Node.js and Npm, writing code that processes requests, and running the web server in your browser. We're going to have to do two things in here. First thing is we're going to write code like we've been doing, and we're going to run it like we've been doing, but to make sure that it works, we're going to have to go into our browser window and tell our browser to connect to our server on our machine. Okay, so that's what we're going to do in just a minute. So in this Consider Us, this is pretty much what you're going to end up doing in this Capstone project, where it says consider this on the bottom of page 41. You're going to be doing a bunch of this stuff. All right? So, understanding web servers, page 41. What we are going to do is we're going to take our machine and use it as both a client and as a server. Guess what? You already did that. You may or may not remember, but remember how we went in and we added PHP MyAdmin last semester? We were using PHP MyAdmin as basically we were using it like a database server. So we had our machine that we were using as both a client and as a server. All right. So if you want to know more about web servers, you can look in the blue box that's here on page 41. Again, it's not my goal in here to read to you. All right. Now, halfway down on there, they talk about get and post. You see that? You may remember this from HTTP time. You know, in the AWD1111 class, you may not. If you are asking if you are going out to a web server and asking for something, can you show me this? That's a GET request. If you create a form and you want to let somebody submit something where it's going to a database or it's going whatever, that's a POST. Now, what you'll notice when we go a little further in here, there's other ones. There's GET, there's POST, there's delete. You know, what if you want to delete something, all right? And there'll be the equivalent of an update. And I'm not going to get into that right now because it's a little bit hinky, for lack of better words, all right? And we will be talking about this stuff as we go on. On the bottom of this blue box here, it says, most web applications today are no longer HTTP, they're now HTTPS, meaning they've got the security, more security built into them. Even if you don't, you know, I believe, I mean, I could be wrong, but I believe when I came here, you know, I'm starting my 5th year, I think we were http://rankin.edu. Now we're https://rankin.edu. All right? Okay. They mention again on the bottom of page 41 going on to page 42, the author says when you visit a site like https://www.google.com, behind the scenes you're making a request to Google servers, which in turn send back a response to you, rendering the Google search page. That shouldn't be anything new. But this is another request response cycle. You are making an HTTP request. The server is going to give you back an HTTP response. You can read this 5-step process that they go through on the top of page 42. Taking a quick look at it, am I right in assuming that makes sense to you? Mm-hmm. Okay. Again, there's one of these quick checks. What does the web server receive from the client? What does it send? Okay, it receives requests, it sends back responses. All right. Initializing the application with NPM. You've already done this. All right, where we did the NPM init. Okay, so there's no big thing in here. Coding the application. We're going to do it the way they did it, and there's better ways and there's worse ways of doing it than what they've done. But in 4.3, that's on the bottom of page, bottom half of page 43, under this coding the application, it says when you install Node, the core library was installed too. Within that library is a module called HTTP. Two of the modules that you're going to use the most in here are HTTP, again for our hypertext transfer protocol, requests, responses, etc., and something that's called FS, which stands for file system. You want to write to files, read from files, copy files, etc. So we're going to use those quite a bit. All right, they want us to create a new main job. We don't have to do that. We can just use the one that we have. All right, so what I want you to do is to go back to, I mean, there's nothing that you created so far that you couldn't recreate. It's in the book, right? So go back to your Visual Studio code and go back into your main.js file. Just remove all the code that's in there. Those 3 lines that we put in, just remove them. There. Okay. Let's see. In this section, we're going to use a package that's called HTTP status codes. Now, you don't have to write this down. Start to commit this to memory, okay? If you get back a status code in the 200s, like 200, everything's good, okay? If you get one back in the 400s, not good. I don't know if you remember the old infamous 404 error, file not found. Yeah. If you get back an error in the 500s, it's a problem, but it's not on your end, it's on the server end, okay? And you're going to see more of this in the future as we go on, okay? All right. We're going to do, and I'm going to let you read this yourself on page 44. We're about to go in and create it. We're going to come in here. We're going to create our own server right now. We're going to key in the code that's shown on page 45 in the book. There are better ways of doing it than what the author is showing here. Did you hear me? All right. But go to listing 4.1 if you would, please. And we're going to do it just the way, well, we're not going to do it exactly the way they do it because he codes stupidly. Okay, in your first, you've got a blank file now, right? Line 1, const port equal 3000, put a semicolon at the end. He doesn't do that, we're going to. Next line, const HTTP equals require HTTP, like they've got it there, but put const before it. Make sure at the end of line 1 you put a semicolon, not a comma. What they've done is just, it's piss poor programming. Next line, const HTTP status equal require HTTP status codes, semicolon at the end. Next line, const app equal http.create server, and it's case sensitive. You got to do it just like that. Now, do you see after that where it says request and response? Do you see that? You can type that in. Almost every book that you see, rather than typing in the word request, because it's more typing, they type in REQ. Rather than typing response, they type in RES. I'm only telling you that because I'm just so used to doing it like that right now. So I'm going to put in here REQ, comma, RES. You can do it exactly the way they did it if you want to. It doesn't hurt anything. Make sure after that create server that you've got 2 left parentheses in there. See how they have got it in the book? All right. Then parenthesis. Then one of those fat arrows. Curly brace. Hit enter so your other curly brace is on a new line. Console.log received an incoming request. We're going to go over all this stuff in just a minute. Semicolon at the end of that line. Next line. Now I did RES. If you did the word response, it's got to be like they have in the book, but I did RES, so it's RES dot write head. Notice we're telling the system that it worked. So we're saying HTTP status dot OK. So we're setting it at 200. So I'm down where it says let response message equal. I don't know if that's around where you are or not, but I want you to type this whole thing in here exactly, pretty much exactly the way they're showing it. You see where it's got the two console.logs, the bottom two, where it says console.log sent a response, and then console.log the server has started. Make sure you use backticks there. The backtick is the one right on your keyboard that's right next to the number 1 on your keyboard. If you use regular single quotes, it won't work correctly. So I've got a total of 17 lines. I don't know if you've got all those in there or not yet. And when I try running it, so I saved it and I ran it, I get an error message. And I remember this before, and it explains in here. Did yours work?
Hold on. Yeah, I got an error message.
Cannot find module http-status-codes. I got the same thing. And somewhere in here it tells you that if you get that error, how you fix it. I got to remember where that is. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to leave it like this because I want to go back and talk about everything that this means. Okay? So bring up your code, if you would, please. So the first line I've got in there is const port equal 3000. All right, that's the port number that you're using. Okay, you probably already figured that out. Now, that said, that works fine if, 3000 or 5000 are the two ports that are used the most often when you're testing on your own machine. What we're going to do fairly quickly is we're going to change this, and we're going to tell the system that if there's a port already set, use that one, otherwise use 3000. So you'll learn how to do that. It's very simple, just a little bit you got to add onto this line. Then we're requiring the HTTP module right there. All right. Then we're saying HTTP status equals, then we're requiring the HTTP status code. So the module, all right, is what basically lets us understand what HTTP is, where the status codes are what I mentioned before, the 200s, the 300s, etc. Then we're trying to create a server. All right. Now, I don't know about yours, but when you look on here, look on your screen if you would. I've got REQ and RES. You might use the words request and response. It doesn't matter. But my word REQ is gray and the other one is blackened because I'm not using REQ in my code anyplace. So what's happening is code is letting me know, Visual Studio Code is letting me know, hey, you've got a parameter in there that you're not using. It's not an error, but it's letting me know that that parameter is not being used. Okay? Then we're creating our server. That's what line 4 through 8 are doing. They're creating the server. So it says in there, notice we needed to require HTTP because line 4 uses http.createServer. If we didn't have if we commented out line 2 or didn't have it in, and you put an HTTP dot, it wouldn't know what it meant. So we're telling it to create a server. When you create the server like this, you've got to pass in a request and you have to pass in a response. That's the REQ and the RES. Sometimes when you do some of these things, you've got to pass that stuff in and there might be more parameters as well. Okay? Then console.log means that we should write right on our screen, right in our, right where we are in Git. It should write on there, receive an incoming request. That's it. It should write that it's received. I wrote received, doesn't matter. All right. Then we're telling it that basically what we're going to be writing out right now to our server is HTML. Okay? That's the content type. And that HTML is, since we put that in, the system understands that in line 10 what an H1 is. It's HTML. So once we get this working, and again, we will, once we get it working and we run this, all you'll see on your Git line is the message it'll just sit there and it won't flash or anything. It'll just be sitting there saying, received an incoming request. And once you get that, then what you'll do is you'll go over and you'll bring up an empty browser window. You'll type in HTTP localhost, which is 127.0.0.1, but HTTP localhost : 3000, you hit enter and it should come back and say hello universe. All right? But it's going to your own server that you created. Well, I gotta find out where that error is. Because I remember it even saying Someplace in here it says that. So, jumping back into the book then. All right. They tell you what the fat arrow syntax is on page 44, about halfway down, a third of the way down on the page. They explain everything that's in here. Now, you see the warning there on page 44? Right under the warning, the most important word to take out of today. The argument in create server is a callback function. All right, so in other words, it's invoked whenever an event occurs within the server. Remember, this event loop is running, and it's waiting for something to happen. Well, now something has happened. So it's going to print out, it's going to create that server, and it's going to print out that one line that received, whatever it was, received an incoming request, and then it's just sitting there waiting for something else to happen. So as it says, the first line uses a write head to define some basic properties to put into the headers. And I'll let you read that stuff yourself. I mean, there's nothing to read. We're setting back 200, which means okay. Then on page 45, as the author says there, right below that line, you're writing a line of HTML. In the response with write, and you're closing it with an end. You must end your response because the system otherwise is hanging there, and it won't know that you want it to continue going. All right. You also log the response as it says, so you can see the response was sent to the server itself. The last line of code, the last thing that's down there, that app.listen, should end up saying, again, anything that's console logged is going to show in your Git window. So it should say the server has started running, and is listing on port 3000. Those backticks that I mentioned to you, they're called template literals. There's something that's new in JavaScript ES6, and it takes whatever variable that you put in there, you put in curly braces and a $sign before, and it puts it right in there. In the olden days, like before ES6, like before 2015, you would have had to have written single quote, not a backtick, single quote, the server has started and is listing on port, space, single quote, plus sign, and then port. Now you don't have to do that. This is considered a better way of doing it than the other way, although either way will work. All right. So turning up to page 46, as it says there on the very top of the page, if you don't specify a port number, your operating system will choose a port for you. This port number is what you'll soon use to confirm that the web browser is working. Again, 3000 and 5000 are probably the two most common ones for people to use. Now, the rest of the page here, we're going to spend a minute and go over it, talks about callback. And as it says right here, part of what makes Node.js so fast and efficient is its use of callbacks. They're not new to JavaScript, but they're used throughout Node. They're considered a more advanced JavaScript type of topic. We are going to take some time and go back and really take a look at callbacks. When you do callbacks, there's three ways that you can do them. We're learning the simple way right now. Okay, just a regular callback. Well, then people decided that this was too much work because when you do a callback, you could, if you don't know how to code or what you're doing, you could have a callback within a callback within a callback, and you can get yourself almost into an infinite loop. Literally, you don't have to go there, but it's referred to as callback hell, and you can go out to callbackhell.com and it'll explain it to you in detail. All right. So they came up with two other ways of doing it. Basically, in about, I think it was ES6 and around 2015, they said, well, we can always also use what are called promises. And it's like, for instance, if I said to you, hey, I promise I'm going to bring in a pizza tomorrow. I'm not going to, but if I said I promise that, I either do it, so I come through with my promise, or I don't do it. So the promise is going to either succeed or fail. It's a better way of writing it than straight callbacks, okay? Then, I think in a year or two later, they said even that's too hard. So they have something now that's called async await. We'll look at all of those, all right, as we go on in here. Okay, so they say a callback is an anonymous function. So an anonymous function is not named. It's set up so that it's invoked when something else finishes. All right? So they give an example here. Consider virtually depositing a check in your bank account by uploading a picture to your bank's mobile app. A callback is the equivalent of receiving a notification a couple of days later. Okay? But you're still able to go out and use that money, right? You know what I'm saying? That's what they're mentioning here. So it says in the HTTP server example, incoming requests from the client are received on a rolling basis. Remember, basically it's single threaded. So one thread that's handling everything. So that's what they're saying. They show this again pictorially on the bottom half of page 46. But it's pretty much what I mean. I don't think I need to read the picture to you. All right, so ideally when we read this, that's what it was going to say. Now, I'm going to find what that error was, and we're going to fix it. And it'll take me just a second, but that's basically what I had. So, let's see if I can do how to do this. Okay, do this if you would. Go back into Git and type in the following. HTTP, no, I'm sorry, not that. Npm I, which is a shortcut for the word install, http-status-codes minus capital S. Now, tell me, is what you just typed in npm space, a lowercase I space, http-status-codes, all in lowercase space, minus capital S? Okay, is that what you typed in? Mm-hmm. That's a shortcut. We could have also typed in npm space, the word install space, http status code space, minus save, all in lowercase. Okay, so did you put that in? Mm-hmm. Hit enter. Now do your node main again. Did it work? Yes, that means it worked. Now, minimize that window. Okay? Go out to your browser. Open up an empty window in your browser. In that empty window, type in localhost, all in lowercase, :3000, and hit enter. Does it say hello universe? Yeah. You just made a server and you connected to it. The bad thing is right now all it can do is show that message. What we'll look at tomorrow is how we can send it HTML, how we can send it CSS, etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. And for some reason, you know, I knew that if I searched, it was in there, and it was on, if you care, it was up on page. Was on page 43. It said, within this project directory, the terminal run npm I HTTP status codes -s. I skipped that. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to, but I did. So it's back under section 4.3 on page 43. All right. I think that's good for today. Again, tomorrow we're going to go over lesson 5, and then we're going to go over lesson 6, and then I'm going to give you time. So that's that's about 20 to 25 pages. It's a lot less than we did today. I'm going to give you the rest of the period then to work on the capstone. All right. Now,